This is Facility Rockstars, the podcast that celebrates the unsung heroes of our daily lives, facility professionals. I'm your host, Jay Colbert. Join me as we honor these great leaders, sharing stories, insights, and expertise that empower us all to learn and grow together. Facility Rockstars is sponsored by Coludus, operating the way you operate in order to make your life easier. Welcome back to a special episode of Facility Rockstars. I'm your host, Jay Colbert, and today we have something truly special in store for you. As 2024 draws to a close, we want to take a moment to reflect on the incredible guests we've had the privilege of hosting this year. These are the local leaders, innovators, and problem solvers who are shaping the future of facilities management and creating smarter, more sustainable, and more efficient workspaces. In this episode, we'll be revisiting some of the most impactful moments from our conversations with these incredible guests. We are highlighting the learning lessons that each person has gained throughout their career and some inspirational moments that truly stood out in 2024. And let's not forget the laughs.
So I think, as we've talked many times before in a couple of different forums, is the people and the team that you have as your core support for, getting all of the jobs done that you need to get done. Can't be possible without them. So it's by far the number one aspect to, your success is your people.
That definitely resonates. And I see you do that through your leadership and your teams. How do you actually make that happen and how does it grow?
Yeah. Well, I think, obviously you got to find the right people, right? The right people that are willing to learn and absorb all the different aspects of the job. Everybody thinks of like a facilities mechanic. Oh, yeah, go turn wrenches. Well, in the pharmaceutical world, it's not just go turn wrenches. You got to worry about, the parts that you're putting in. It has to be like for like. It can't be, it can be like in kind, but you got to have, protocols that make sure that it can do the job that it says it does. You've got to be able to fill out all the paperwork because if you don't document it, it wasn't done, right? Things like that. So you got to have the right people with the willingness to learn and to do what they need to do, and then invest in them, right? To teach them. And to teach them is not always an easy task. And sometimes it takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, depending on what profession or what focus they have, and how long it takes to get them up to speed, you know. Every day I wake up, I'm excited to go to the office. And especially in this environment because there's always something that's new. There's always something that you're learning. There's always some type of issue to overcome. And when you're in an environment like that where you're consistently learning and you're consistently moving and you're all the time, growing, it's a great environment to be in,
Don't overcomplicate things. Keep it to the point and make it simple. A lot of the guys I work with, sometimes they overcomplicate things when you're going into a meeting and you got PowerPoints and flow charts and Gantt charts and Excel spreadsheets. A lot of the times, the contractors I'm working with, some of them are familiar and use the computers. A lot of them don't. So I kind of really make things basic and simple. Bullets and what's my role? What's my responsibility? And we break it down just by bullet when we meet. I know to speak with a lot of other facilities managers. Sometimes different companies have different structure and they might have what everybody wants to have: a facilities manager, a supervisor, a coordinator, and then your technicians, HVAC, electrician, carpenter, so forth and so on. And sometimes everybody isn't so privileged to have that structure at their facility. So you try to make best with what you have.
The biggest lesson I've learned in my career is that we work with people first. Yes, we do have to work with numbers and strategies and make plans to achieve the goals that you put for your business and all that. But without people, it won't happen. So people first, and then numbers and systems.
Thank you. I've heard that answer about people many times. I think yours sounds slightly different. And we've talked in the past about this where you're managing emotions with people and et cetera, and we can get into that, right? But what are some of the things that you've done? Let's call it best practices, or what have you executed to make sure that you actually do have the right people around you?
So first of all, surround yourself with the right people, and
Mhm.
then just get the hell out of their way.
Mm.
You find the right people for the job. Make sure you recruit the best ones, and then just let them do their job. You know, don't be a micromanager. I don't believe in micromanaging my teams. I believe that people have to have the opportunity to be creative and come up with the best strategies. Sometimes the people that you hire, they come from a different industry, which is my case. uh, uh, they come up with the best solutions. It's not about inventing the wheel or finding creating a whole new process, but they come with a fresh mind. And if you micromanage them, pretty much you're constraining their creativity and the options for your business. That's number one. Number two, deal with people emotions. Uh, like I said, we're working with people. They're not just numbers. They come every day. They have needs, they have frustrations, maybe issues like all of us, we carry in our backs every single day. Learn how to navigate people's emotions and get the burst of them every day when they come to work for you. Get the best from them and also support them as much as possible. Like I said, I get out of the way of my teams, and I only get involved if they need me to, or if the situation requires me to get into.
Mm.
That doesn't mean don't monitor their work. Yes, you monitor their work, but you let them do their job. That's the best advice I could give.
Most of my day comes down to just simply figuring out problems. Every day is different, which makes it exciting and unique and keeps me motivated. But I would say that, when you are really trying to solve problems most of the time, it's really important to make sure that you focus on the feedback. And feedback is something that I think sometimes gets overused, or the process is overused. And getting quality feedback is very difficult. And, one thing that I found, and so I tour around to our communities all over the country, and, we are responsible for supporting a number of people in a number of different locations and different styles of buildings, tall buildings and long buildings and giant campuses. And, I think sometimes you'll find that when you meet with people, they're most interested in telling you what you want to hear, not what you need to hear. And it's not easy to get the feedback that you want. And we try all different types of things like surveys, which have a perspective on surveys. They're very hard. They come off as something that's very easy to do, but it's very difficult to get what you want out of a survey. And let's face it, right? Nobody really wants to take those surveys. And but getting quality feedback for you to make good decisions and base the next steps in whatever you're doing, if you're building a training or making a decision on whether or not you replace a boiler plant or something to that effect, or really collecting feedback from a number of different sources is incredibly important and very difficult. And it's not so much as just saying, tell me the truth, right? Trying to come up with things to say. What I have kind of come up with over the years is trying to ask different questions. And say, for example, if you're rolling out a new software package and you say, so how is it working for you? The only answer you're going to be, oh, it's great, or some minor piece of feedback. And you really need to think about how you ask questions. You need to think about, what do you actually need? And drilling down to that next level where you can actually ask questions and get someone's genuine and honest opinion is when you'll get quality feedback. And it's something that you really have to invest a lot of time in.
Cross-functional groups, and how
Mhm.
there are all sorts of organizations and events and activities and groups that we can join. And I don't know if we talked about like herds staying together. You didn't use those
Yeah.
words; those are mine. But
Yeah.
can you expand on that? What you meant by cross-functional and the benefit of that?
Yeah, absolutely. Some of the greatest mentors I've had, things that I've learned from
professionals that were not within the EHS space, just like I'm sure, some of your facilities colleagues would say the same. Every profession has a group, a consensus group, or whatever that might be. Two of the big ones that I've been actively involved in over the years, one is the American Industrial Hygiene Association, and the other is the Board of Certified Safety Professionals. And each one of those also has local chapters, so you can kind of get together and commiserate with colleagues at other companies that dabble within the EHS space. But then over the years, I've participated in other meetings like with the ISPE, as a result of interacting with some engineers in different pharma spaces. And you definitely, for one, you build your network instantly and exponentially as a result of going to these other professional groups outside of your own. And you learn things, and you get a better understanding of how others think, and their perspectives, because you're seeing their siloed organization, and they all have their similar thoughts and group think and all that. And just like us in the EHS space, jumping at those opportunities to cross that divide and go to some of those other groups and learn about some of the things that are interesting, and new technologies or new challenges that one professional group is dealing with. It only betters you, I think.
Now, is that just something that's always been in your DNA? Are you just have a thirst for knowledge or learning
Yeah,
different?
you said it. You said it early on. I'm kind of a big deal. So, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think as I've gotten farther in my career, it's less about the destination, and it is more about the ride along the way. And it is nice to learn new things, especially as you've been in one profession for a while, and it's nice to mix it up and learn something else.
My biggest lesson learned, not only as a sort of an industry professional, but as a facilities manager, is that your issues are not unique to you. You didn't invent them. Whatever challenges you have, whether it's resources or staffing or system failures, are not unique to you. So don't be afraid to pick up the phone and reach out to a peer or a mentor or peer groups. Reach out to people that have experienced it before you, and to work together to find a solution. I think all too often, especially facilities managers when they're young, will think, "Oh my God, this problem is unique to me. How am I going to solve it?" And they're racking their brains trying to think of all of their college learning and what did I learn in the books. And oftentimes there's somebody who's dealt with it last week, last month, somebody just pick up the phone and call a friend.
I'd like to highlight something a little different around kind of challenging the norms in a highly regulated field like myself, biotech and pharma. So for me, as a young engineer, kind of coming through these big companies with these processes that have been reiterated time and time again, I found that just kind of questioning the status quo has been a differentiator for me. So right, like if there's a standard practice for how you're doing work, and like as a younger engineer, you can be timid or potentially a little taken back by some of the management or senior engineers. You don't want to question why things are done. But for me, it shows a level of interest, and it shows it because it forces people to think, right? Because there might be a decision on why that was made or how that was made that you might not be aware of, and that's fine. But there could also be an opportunity to make really impactful change. And if you're thinking about it, there's a good likelihood someone else is thinking about it too. So for me, it's something that someone else actually mentioned to me. So a mentor and a friend, he actually was like, if you see something, ask the question, because the worst you can look is curious, which to me is, I think a positive thing. That's definitely one of the biggest takeaways I've had. And then another one that I'd like to mention as well is just around kind of doing the little things right and kind of controlling what you can control. This same kind of mentor friend, he actually gave me some critical feedback early on in my career, which is another lesson learned, is getting critical feedback. But for this, he gave it to me, and it was probably uncomfortable. But I think what I learned from that is, if you can do the little things right, such as showing up on time, showing up prepared to meetings, your attitude for how you address certain problems or scenarios or situations, that's the stuff you can control. Because I mean, in this world, there's so many different things that can happen. So I think that was some great advice that I got on. And what was it a little uncomfortable at first? Yes. But I think if you're able to do the little stuff right, it builds those winning habits. And I think that can have a positive impact on your career.
Biggest lesson really has to do around servant leadership. I think people get it wrong all the time. people think of it as like when you go on safari, you have these porters who set everything up. They do the cooking, they do everything. Basically, you're just there and they do everything for you. And some people think that's what servant leadership is. And I always remind people that it really originated with the Sherpas who help people get up the mountain at Mount Everest. And they don't drag you up that mountain. They set the conditions so that you can do it yourself. And the mere fact that there are bodies on the mountain right now shows you that they're not making it happen. It's on you, but they are creating those conditions. And I think people forget that occasionally. They think you're supposed to do everything for somebody else. That's not how people grow. That's not how they become successful. I don't set the table, but I make the conditions capable to set the table.
It's a philosophy. It's not a program. I'm not selling you a program. It's a way of thinking. HOP is really essentially about understanding the context and conditions of work, the complexities that we work in every day. And like I said, it's an operating philosophy to give us a framework for building more resilient organizations. So by using these 5 principles, that's part of the philosophy, which I'm going to run through quickly here. I've mentioned safety culture many times here in the conversation already. We had a strong culture program, but it started to plateau. And then so when I came back, I brought in this HOP philosophy, and it really kind of rejuvenated us. And one of the programs that it made a huge difference in is the contractor program.
Okay.
And some of the first people to get involved with me were folks in the contractor program and in our facilities department that really latched onto it. There's 5 principles. First one is you need to understand that people make mistakes. Humans are fallible. We all make mistakes every day. And often when something happens and somebody makes a mistake, we jump to conclusions, we stop there, and that's it. We don't go any further to uncover any more information. So first, we got to understand that people make mistakes, and that's the start of the conversation. And that the next one is once you accept that people make mistakes, is that then you need to understand that blame fixes nothing. Blame is emotionally satisfying, just not operationally satisfying. When you point the finger at somebody, you're basically emotionally satisfying yourself, moving that emotion from you to them and walking away. But you didn't solve anything. And the next person can come along and make the same mistake again in that system because you just blame somebody, you didn't fix the system. A little bit of this is like an old view of leadership versus newer view of leadership being more collaborative, really empowerment versus top-down leadership. And then so number 3, the third principle is context drives behavior.
Okay.
So context in our system drives people's decisions every day. Our culture, the tools we've provided them, the equipment. So when I say context, I'm talking about information about our system. And then principle number 4 is once I have context, now I can go learn and improve. So principle number 4 is learning and improving is vital. And that's what the world is on facilities is all about, continuous improvement. And on operations, in our lean programs and all those things, learning and improving is vital. So once I've uncovered that context, by not blaming, and I started this conversation off today about being open-minded and being humble.
And listening.
All those things help me go uncover context in everyday work. You can use these principles in everything you do every day. Once you have context, now you can go learn and improve. And then the last principle, which is one of the most important ones to me and has really, really impacted me in my life and how I operate as a leader every day, is leadership response matters. And it matters a lot.
I'm learning lessons every day. So maybe try to knit together a few themes over the 30 years that I've been practicing. So really 3 major chapters. So roughly a decade each. And there's a lesson learned from each one. In the first decade, I learned it was really essential to develop my external network, learn critical skills, and gain material experiences, material to facilities, of course. And just to unpack that a little bit. Simple things like attending ISPE, AFE, Cornet, ASHRAE, all the acronyms, going to networking events, fundraisers. With the onset of ESG, they're just limitless. Developing critical relationships. So with manufacturers of equipment, operation maintenance vendors, consultants like architects and engineers, main contractors, general contractors, subcontractors, and learning the fundamentals of building, design, construction, and commissioning. When I came out of Mass Maritime, it really was about marine engineering, working on ships. And when I transitioned to facilities, and I walked in a facility, I was quite honestly overwhelmed and a bit intimidated. So I really felt like it was important to try to understand a little bit more about how things operated, how they were designed, and how they were built. And I happen to have an undergrad degree, but I would say complementing that degree with certifications, and there's again acronyms, right? Like CEM, CFM, CPMM, or going for your master's in facilities, super critical. And that's actually how it played out for me. So as a design engineer for 3 years, worked for a construction management company for a couple of years, and then went on to be a commissioning agent. I was relentless in the first decade of my career, going to Schneider Academy to learn building controls, how to select, install, run computerized maintenance management systems. Went and got my, acronyms, my CEM and CPMM, and then capped off my first decade with a master's in facilities management. So, first big lesson was all about getting that those critical skills, building that network, and gaining those experiences. Really, the
Awesome.
second decade, which coincided with my start at Boston Scientific, the major lesson I learned was say yes to every project or ask. And I know that seems a bit generic, so I'll go into it a little bit, but be the go-to person for all things facilities. Generate wins no matter what size they are, and you have to build that internal network in the political capital. It's super critical as you advance in your career. And I'll give you just a funny story. So I remember it was the first year at Boston Scientific. I got called into a meeting with the chief operating officer and my boss at the time, who had reported into the COO. And the COO says, "Hey, I need someone to go to Costa Rica and build a brand new GMP factory. Can you guys do it?" And my boss, direct boss, paused, and I said, "Yes, of course." Maybe I was naive, maybe I was young, I don't know. But the COO leaves, and my boss says to me, he says, "This one's on you." And I can remember it this day. And so then I went back to my office, and I was actually a little bit shell shocked, and then I snapped out of it. And what I did, Jay, was I immediately went back to my network. I reached out to a bunch of the folks that I have, developed relationships with over the first decade, assembled a team that gave me confidence to go into a country like Costa Rica and develop the first ever LEED certified building in that country and in Central America, fourth in Latin America. Did we have issues? Did we have bumps, hiccups? Yeah, of course. That's how you learn. But that was just a good example of just raising my hand and just saying, yeah, I will go ahead and take that on.
For a lot of what I've been talking about is kind of like de-stressing things, right? So when I said surround yourself with people you can trust, so you don't have to worry about them. So they're not in the back of your mind, oh, hey, are they making the right decision for the company? Are they making the right decision for the team? You never want to have to occupy space in your brain worrying about things like that. Same thing with the fundamentals and your foundation, like with the business. Oh my God, like, does our accounting team have the right software in place? Do we have enough people to manage this? Do we have enough, processes in place? It's like just causes stress and takes away from, whatever mission you're trying to complete at the time. You want to de-stress as much as you can. And you do that by mastering the fundamentals, kind of doing all the things we've said so you can focus on the mission. I guess all of this really kind of boils down to allowing you, right, the business owner or the person in charge, to kind of focus on driving more revenue, growing the company, doing things like that by not having to worry about all these little things, right? Because that's what eats people alive. It's like, I don't want to have to worry about this basic stuff. And you'll talk to business owners too, and they get so frustrated. A lot of times their frustration stems from these fundamental issues that they're having, right? Like these base level problems that just keep popping up. You'll hear them like, "Oh my God, I can't," you'll hear this, "I can't believe I have to effing deal with this Like, I can't believe I have to deal with this. You wouldn't, as a business owner, have to deal with that if you had taken the time, right, to master those fundamentals. They would be taken care of. They would take care of themselves.
To be audacious, is that something that you just have within you, your drive, or is that something that can actually be taught? And I'm trying to get like a best practice here for anyone listening and say, all right, well, how do I just start to be audacious? How can I?
Yeah, I think anyone can. I do think you don't have to be born with it. When I think of audacity and putting that into practice, I think some of my larger career changes, whether that was going from the service fleet and being like, hey, you know what? I know I want to be a SEAL. I'm going to do what it takes and apply and go through the program. Or when I transitioned from the military, putting together this kind of design and this plan on how I saw my transition. You know, hey, I want to go to business school. I want to go to a top tier business school, and then I want to transition into something that involves constantly learning and fine tuning my business acumen. And it ended up being consulting. But you know, putting those plans together and thinking about it and mapping that out is one thing. Actually taking those first couple steps to be like putting it into action, that takes some courage. Being willing to put yourself out there and willing to fail. It's those individuals who actually make the conscious choice to start competing and start, you know, putting themselves out there to either fail or succeed. That's where, you know, life actually happens. So to answer your question specifically, I don't think you have to be born with it. I think anyone can practice it, and it can even be practiced in day-to-day challenges and day-to-day goals that you have. Just get in the habit of being action-driven, and at a certain point, stop talking about things, stop thinking about them, and just do them.
And that's a wrap on today's special episode. A big thank you to all of our amazing guests for their contributions this year and our loyal listeners for joining us on this journey. We hope you found inspiration and actionable insights to take back to your work and day-to-day lives. It's been another exciting episode of Facility Rockstars, and we'll see you all next time. It's a wrap. Another episode of Facility Rockstars is in the books. Facility Rockstars is sponsored by Colutus, operating the way you operate in order to make your life easier. Until next time, facilitate and rock on.